So here comes one of the, I think in most founder lists, one of the top 3 brands in the world. Like wherever you ask, it would be one of the top 3 brands. First call, and this investor, took the call with my company fundraising, hyper successful company, and asked, by the way, what's a heat pump? And the founder was like, hold on, did you take the call?
There are heated discussions, right? But I think like why we're able to do that, I think like it's not just friends, but I think it's this depth of respect for each other, right? It's at the end of the day, it's like I inordinately respect you, and
I will say this. 8 years later, I still don't understand why a person put a single euro into Katerra. I still don't understand it, and nobody can explain it to me.
But I think the scene from that pitch meeting felt less like a startup pitching to me, rather than me being in the presence of like a mob boss, passing orders to his henchmen.
So one of the things that fascinates me the most about people in business is how few people are good at prioritizing.
On the founder side, I would certainly say you should be delegating more as you grow. If not, then you're going to be micromanaging everything, and you're not going to scale.
Being kind in a way where in the beginning you have to go out of your way to create social debt, as in others are maybe receiving kindness and favors from you to be indebted to you. If you're playing a long enough game, it usually compounds very effectively in your favor.
Okay, so this one we're going to have a bit of fun with. So we've had permission from Shub, Adam and Patrick to ask any question that we like.
Officially an AMA.
It's an AMA.
And by the way, this is apparently the only fun episode.
Only.
Yeah, everything else is mega
Everything
serious.
else was like not fun at all. And super
Don't watch any of
serious
those episodes, is what he's saying.
Release this last.
The gates are open. I'll leave it to my worthy co-host, Martin, to...
So I like what Adam said at some point in one of the previous episodes, which he said, constraint breeds creativity. Right? So are there any examples of founders who you met that when they got it completely opposite?
Yeah, pretty much largely anything prior to anything past 2023. It's just I want more. More is a form of success. What I've always found, it's to kick that. I brought Uber into play, growth for the sake of growth. What happens is that you have too much money. What you do is you overhire, you mishire, you overspend, you misallocate. You do things that you wouldn't be doing.
How do you bring them down then to the right level?
Well, you have a lever at our disposal. If you lead around instead of going for a much larger round, you have something that's a little bit more manageable, of a little bit more constraints.
Did you have any fallouts with them, or any examples of a more heated discussion, more honest discussion?
No, not really in any heated discussions. I think if you frame it in discussion of here's the amount of money that we need to essentially achieve to hit the milestones within a certain period of time. And then if you achieve those milestones, you can then effectively pull off the proverbial road to raise an additional round at a much higher valuation. We did that actually with a company called ABBA. We gave, it was a smaller raise than traditional for that pre-seed round. It gave him a certain amount of runway. I think it allowed him to be more creative, to do more with less, and then also reach in what are the most value-add metrics that I can use and pull forward to then raise up another step up. So it helps them long-term, as in value creation for the business. Instead of, hey, I've got now 2x or 3x more money than I should be raising, and reaching for 5 different things that are not going to be as accretive to the business short-term. So it really kind of focuses you on what are the short-term metrics or milestones that would inflect the business more so than, if not, you're just going to get distracted.
Mm-hmm. I can't think of a single portfolio company where what you're describing, Martin, actually happened to us. But what I will say is, I mean, we're non-control, high-knowledge investors. That's how we think of ourselves.
Non-control, high knowledge.
Non-control, high-knowledge investors, which means that if that were ever to happen to us, it's not because we're not, harsh enough with the founders or not controlling it enough, because that's by design. We're non-control investors. But the problem in that case would have occurred like years before, where we made a misassessment of the character of the founders, right? And so for us, one of the things that I think we've done quite a good job avoiding is just rushing into rushed fundraisers. So we did have a few fundraisers, especially in 2020, that went more quickly than our comfort. But by and large, we've avoided these, and that comes with the benefit of founder and investor getting to know each other really well and knowing whether they really want to build something for the long haul. And so, yeah.
And also, I would say a lot of these firms at this earliest point in journey, they're not set up to absorb a large amount of money. So it's superfluous. It does you a greater add than just having a greater your balance sheet, and you feel like the old saying, your money's like burning a hole in your pocket. So those companies raising $5 to $10 million first rounds, these companies are not set up to absorb it. You're going to be reaching in areas that are going to be detrimental to the longevity and productivity of the firm, just because you feel like you have to put that to use, right? And so those firms are just not set up to absorb it appropriately and efficiently.
Yeah. So assuming that you have $1 million to give to a founder, and at what point you start understanding of them knowing how this money will be spent? Does it happen before you hand over the check, and then you have conviction that, okay, I'm happy to hand over the check? Or where does this conviction get built? You sometimes give the money first, and then by working with the founder, it kind of...
Take my money first and then tell me how you're going to use it.
The latter definitely never. But you're absolutely right to ask it, Martin, because things like that happen in VC. They're actually relatively common practice in some pockets of the market. For us, something like that has not happened and will not happen. No, for us, we have to agree on how to allocate resources before we make an investment.
What if the founder doesn't stick to that?
Yeah.
Well, it's if the founder doesn't stick to that, I think there's consequences. Meaning, hey, if you go outside those lines and you are off target of the intended plan when we set out this journey together, you can't be coming back to the well or to dad and mom and be like, well, I kind of screwed up, I misallocated, I misspent. Can you help me out? In his extension, it's like, well, hey, you kind of deviate. We went through this. We had this covenant that we went forward with this partnership. We agreed on how we're going to deploy this capital, run this company in a very efficient manner. And if you deviate away from that and you screw up, you can't be going back to the well and be like, I need more money. Sorry, I kind of fucked up. It's just exactly
one more chance.
But if the other side, if he or she or they deviate in a positive way, hey, you lucked out. But then you're playing craps at that point in time, right? And then you're almost you're creating friction between the relationship of me and you. Hey, we set off this journey together of moving forward in this plan, and you're completely going in a different direction, and that could be a little bit, friction, a lot of friction behind that.
I would also say to that, when we agree with founders on plans, right? So there's numbers and there's spirit, right? And so you can sometimes deviate from the numbers, especially in the very early days of a business, but stay on track with the spirit. And that's exactly how a founder should do it. That's something we're ultra supportive of. In fact, we're asking that of founders, because they will always have the best information to make decisions in the moment, right? And there's 10 decisions a day, and in the early days, all these decisions kind of matter. So if you're kind of going in the right spirit, meaning what are the assets of the business that you want to be raising, that you want to be building? What is the long-term play that you're building against? But perhaps I'm changing my pricing model, and that has an impact on the top line in the spreadsheet in that month. That is to be expected of a very young company.
Okay. So what's the most crazy founder story that you've heard whilst dealing with another investor? So they've come to you and said, this happened.
Oh, I'll kick us off. That's a quick one.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. So I'm an investor in a company for heat pump design software. And so here comes one of the, I think in most founder lists, one of the top 3 brands in the world. Like wherever you ask, it would be one of the top 3 brands. First call, and this investor, took the call with my company fundraising, hyper successful company, and asked, by the way, what's a heat pump? and the founder was like, hold on, did you take the call? I mean, you know what we're doing. And
Remind me who you are again.
Which fallacy is it?
yeah, I mean, that is the fallacy, not even on the nuance. That is like, you didn't even know what market you were taking the call for.
Yeah.
There's one example, it doesn't quite fit perfectly into the question you asked, but it's one of those legendary examples that we talk about. And I think, so, I mean, I'll anonymize the whole thing because, the person is very well known to me and actually very well known in the ecosystem as well. So, actually, I'll have to anonymize a great deal, but maybe the details are still juicy enough. So think of like a very, very high-performing firm that we know of and are privy to and insiders in.
What's his name?
You wish I would tell you. Off the record only, right? With exceptional reporting, exceptional performance. And they reach out to this highly revered investor. And the investor never responds to that email, which, by the way, has detailed performance reports. I later check in with that investor like, hey, this company is doing very well. Do you not find it interesting? Like, what happened? Why did you not pursue it? And they're like, hey, the reports I got here, they're so good. They're so good. I don't get anything as good as that from any of the portfolio companies whose boards I'm on. And if that is the case, why do they need to reach out to me with so much information? There must be something wrong here. And therefore, I did not reply.
Wow.
That's clearly like a passive investment he thought about. Yeah?
And the outcome, of course, is like, this is a massively successful company.
It would be a company they would consider a big miss and an anti-portfolio.
Yeah.
Was it at the early stage of this company?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always curious about like gross margins, metrics, net profitability. How do you look into those when assessing startups at early stages? There's a must be that we definitely want to see this metric. We don't want to see this metric.
I think it depends a bit on the kinds of businesses and models. So there's certain models where I think we have built up the authority to, in fact, even tell companies this is what they should deliver. And this is kind of like within a narrow range how the company will be priced in future rounds, what they're expected to deliver in terms of gross margin, contribution margin, working capital days, how all of these things will work pretty much as a triangle in a good company. And you can't deviate too much if you want to prove yourself to be a high-performing company.
For someone not in the industry like me, not in investing, all of those sound like kind of magic, gross margin,
random jargon thrown by an uninformed person who's pretending like he knows a lot.
It's funny, that's how you sound to me
I
all the
know,
time.
I just described myself right now. So gross margin for the sake of, and the niche we're defining is managed marketplaces, which would typically deal with products and or services. So gross margin would be the revenue minus cost of goods sold, and contribution margin would be gross margin minus additional costs to serve or to complete the transaction.
Oftentimes marketing and sales costs, for example.
Yeah, depends. So in certain models, the sales and marketing costs can be directly attributed to a transaction, in which case you should subtract that. In certain other use cases, you can't directly attribute it to a transaction. It would be like a blended operating cost. And in that situation, it's harder to attach it to a transaction.
So which one of those, if founder gives you metric from their business about one of those, it makes you smile or laugh even?
So look, so this is the thing. So, and this one topic I alluded to, something we'll come back to later, I think in an earlier episode that Patrick and I did on how it's like a seesawing ask in terms of what investors like to see on gross and contribution margins. And maybe you're going too deep in this specific rabbit hole. I think the fallacy with generic VCs, and even with founders, to be honest, they go too deep on optimizing for one thing, whereas everything exists in conjunction with the other. So for example, there's this belief that, for example, a few years ago, the belief would be working capital is bad. And that's it. Any use of working capital means the company is inherently unscalable, regardless of what the margin structure is, regardless of what the return on capital employed is. These days, the new wisdom is, hey, just maximize gross margin. So to give you an idea, there are companies out there which have taken it to such an extreme degree where they're saying, just to be able to show a double-digit gross or contribution margin, we'll now hold on to 60 days of inventory. Not just 60 days of working capital, mind you, which can arise due to other reasons, but you're holding physical goods in a warehouse, for instance, just to be able to show a double-digit margin. And I would say that is a much more difficult business to scale and back as a venture capital firm.
I found that working capital is a positive thing. Like we talked about equipment share a few weeks ago.
It can be if your model allows you to extract very high interest basically on it.
So the thing is that by itself doesn't, at least to me, it doesn't inform me any good or bad in isolation.
Correct.
You have to see it as a in conjunction with other factors.
Correct. Yesterday a founder asked me, for example, Patrick, when I look at the rule of 40, so rule of 40 basically says I take my annual growth rate and I subtract from it my net profit margin. So for example, if I grow...
If it's negative.
Right.
It could also be positive.
Yeah, well, if it's positive, okay, I add up my net profit margin.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. But let's say I grow 100% year over year and my net profit margin is minus 50%. So my rule of 40 says I'm at 50, right? And so the rule of 40 among VC investors says, hey, as long as you're above 40, you're worth looking at. And so this founder asked me, hey, Patrick, why rule of 40 looks really, really good. Should I use that for fundraising? And I said, well, it should be one component of what people will look at, but there's a whole host of other things that will have to be looked at, whether to assess, whether you're growing efficiently, generally running your company efficiently, growing at the right rate, right? Whether your sales efficiency is there, etc. Right? And so that's exactly how we're looking at. Any single KPI doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah, it's a snapshot, right? At the end of the day.
Sounds like something that founders could be educated on, right? Is there a cheat sheet that you guys have, and can you send it to us?
Yeah, one-page checklist.
For everything, for all business models.
Yes,
Yes,
please.
The universe.
Yeah.
Yes, we
They haven't
figured it
shared-
out.
They haven't shared the operating
it on
manual.
No, we do use benchmark sheets for certain types of business models, but it's easily, if you go through the internet, you will probably be able to.
I wanted Fundamental one. I'm not interested in that.
How do you guys deal with personal bias in your investment decisions?
A good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's something you can escape. Like it's deep rooted.
I want to clarify: before we make an investment decision, or after we made an investment decision?
Before.
And after as well, because that's interesting, because you
I should
invested
have asked.
already, so you want to see, oh, that's my company.
Because in my head, you have to sort of neutralize it completely. So how do you get to that stage? And then, but do you? Maybe some personal bias is good.
So in my opinion, if you want to be in a framework where you're investing in what we're calling vertical singularities, it's inevitable. You cannot do that in a framework where it eliminates the risk of bias.
Sure.
You have to allow for it. My personal philosophy, if you deal with that as a systemic risk in the approach, and generally are willing to back yourself and ourselves as a setup, you take it as a portfolio. Some you'll get wrong and some you'll hopefully get very right. But I mean, we are not machines at the end of the day. If the same quirkiness, the same idiosyncratic pattern, which hopefully led us to find an iconic company, will sometimes result in biases which take us astray. It's part of the game, I would say.
Yep.
It depends when in the investment process, right? So if the bias kicks in at the very front, I think it's quite dangerous, and that's something that can lead to deal fever, for example. The more competition for a deal there is, etc., right? Every VC has seen it to a degree, how that played out in the market from 19, 20, 21. And so if it happens at the beginning of a process, that doesn't speak to the individual, and it also doesn't speak to the process of the firm, right? So I like to think we don't have that, but we don't have that because actually we come together as a global investment team multiple times a week, which is very unique for a global firm. Most firms, like Shub explained, have like one hub and one core geography, and then they do a little bit of like satellite things somewhere else, which means that the satellites, they're pretty much on their own, and they need to think about, okay, how do I push something that I can get through the headquarters without actually talking constantly as a global team?
Maybe this is a good point, just a quick detour just to explain for the benefit of our viewers and listeners. So maybe saying, hey, don't the likes of Sequoia, Accel, and Lightspeed, etc. invest all over the world? Aren't they global? Don't they have like a unified setup? So what would you tell them?
The answer is no, they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they have local funds with local teams, right?
centralized. Yeah.
So in order to, and not saying they couldn't eliminate bias on a local level, right? So I'm just making the point of the more you talk as a team, and in our case, a global team with very different local empathies, the more you will benefit from holding each other accountable in terms of how you think about things. One of the things, for example, that Adam says the most in our deal flow meetings is, hey, just to keep myself intellectually honest here. Like that's how he starts asking us for opinions. And so it's this mindset that you're breeding from having constant, rigorous discussion that allows you to unearth each other's biases. You will never be able, I don't believe you will ever be able to constantly, to permanently eliminate it. And I agree with you, Shub, neither should that be the objective, except for the start of the process. At the start of the process, that's not what should get you excited about
correct.
doing something.
Correct.
I think biases, which are the systematic result of self-doubt or lack of self-belief or seeking external acceptance or validation, that bias has no place in a high-performing VC setup. Bias that kicks in due to individual quirks in how we judge opportunities.
What do you mean by quirks?
I mean my personality, dude. That's what I mean by quirks.
But by the way, I mean, just on that note, and VC in itself is a humbling business. Like everybody who's been a few years in VC will tell you that.
Yeah.
Although, and by the way, that's why you might meet a lot of people who make you perhaps sometimes think, oh, this person is not humble at all.
Right.
It's a very humbling business. And so is AECS. So like someone like us who operates at the intersection of two super humbling businesses. And that in and of itself actually, kind of grounds you all the time.
Double humble burger.
So
Yeah.
That's right.
Talking about Citizen. So in this humbling business is when you seek the truth. How important is it to be friends between as you are three of your partners? Because I think you can't. I don't know actually.
You're assuming they're friends.
Huh?
You're assuming they're friends.
Well, you have to have kind of
Sorry,
friendly
just for the
approach
camera.
where someone is giving you their opinion on your idea, and you think that your idea is great, but I'm telling you it's not. Then I don't know what's the connection, like a human connection there. Yeah, it's.
Well, I think you said there's no like the gloves are off when you guys meet, right? There's no like.
I mean,
Is there a part of like liking each other which has important, which plays a role within this brainstorming process that you do?
yeah. It's. I mean, like turning to like the very heated discussions. They usually kind of fall within one camp. We were talking about finding singularities and non-consensus, and that's very hard to get through a unanimous like IC, right? Because it's something that everyone sees. It might not be glaringly obvious to myself or Patrick if she was bringing a deal. There are heated discussions, right? But I think like why we're able to do that, I think like it's not just friends, but I think it's this depth of respect for each other, right? It's at the end of the day, it's like I inordinately respect you, and it's like I'm not trying to harm you, and it's hard to think. When you have a discussion, a very heated discussion, you disagree on some things, and then you just let it sit, and then you just go away, and it doesn't follow you. And so I think it really comes to like I respect your opinion, even though I disagree with it, and tempers will flare. But at the end of the day, I think it's
Really?
yeah.
Not mine.
No, I mean, so I think I don't think. I mean, I've been around some partners and I know of other funds. I don't think they're ever held each other that they don't try to pin each other like down as hard as we do. And like I think we're very vulnerable with each other because I think it ultimately comes to respect of. I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable because I respect you, I trust you quite deeply. It's like these are my brothers, and so like I'm going to be open and forthright. And there's storms that will brew, but I don't think you're going to find another IC that's going to be as similar to ours.
What's inherent in friendship is that you care and you make yourself vulnerable, right? And so whether you call it friendship or There might be a GP team out there that would say, hey, we're not friends, but we care for each other and we make ourselves vulnerable. And because we're in a decision business and because we operate with imperfect information, it's so important to actually let information flow and discuss it with the mindset of, hey, I'm not doing it to hurt each other.
Yeah.
Because it's quick. You can really drift into that direction unless you're very, very careful about each other. But I'm doing it in order to find the perfect decision among imperfect information. And so once everybody approaches it that way, from like caring and being vulnerable to the argument, it can absolutely work.
Yeah, but it is tough. Like you were talking about how you there is bias, and so you will naturally dig your heels in because like you're kind of really bought into this company. Like I got to defend it. Like I'm not gonna. I'll die on this hill. It's like you really dig in and you really have some big sparring sessions. But you're right. I think in order to be vulnerable, I think you have to be compassionate. And so like I think I think it's very unique in how we are very different personality-wise, but like I think we complement each other still very well.
Yes, my observation was based on our 2 days here, so it's a very positive impression I had.
I would actually also like to jump in with my own interpretation. I was slightly, conceptually and philosophically, of course, the same as you guys, but my worldview of how I see both the contrast as well as what we represent. I think, what at least I've seen in other firms, both where I've been a part of and seen as a second or third person view, quite often it resembles like a coalition government at work, where for each decision, you're trying to find your faction that'll get the vote done.
And cliques are
cliques, yes, right? So it functions like a rotating coalition, and the coalition keeps changing depending on the decision required. I think what we have and what hopefully we'll continue to have is a team sport. As in we are a high performing team where each of us individually needs to be a star player, but we're also playing a team sport, and therefore the three of us in tandem need to play together. So we can't make it about us as individuals. We still have to perform in harmony.
Brilliant.
Are there any horror or interesting or fun stories you had whilst pitching to LPs where it didn't quite go to plan?
How is pitching to LPs? How does pitching to LPs look like? Because here we have.
It's not a very documented process, is it? Startups to founders is like very common knowledge, and
it's not too dissimilar to like the process that you'd run with a startup to a VC.
Although I think, to be fair to what you said, I would say it's much more opaque.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Now, but
you
also,
have to wear a suit?
I mean, if you have to, then nobody told me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I think you're right. It's a more opaque process, but on the other hand, it's also more narrow in terms of what they look at, right? I mean, in the end, we're a financial asset class, right? And so there's certain metrics that you look for, and if they work out, most LPs will know literally after 30 minutes talking to you whether they have an interest or not, which is different for founders, right? So founders, unfortunately, sometimes get very opaque feedback. LPs, especially sophisticated ones, always give you very transparent feedback. So that's part of that I like about the process. But getting in touch is very, very hard.
Yeah.
The dumbest investment? The dumbest investment?
Dumbest investment?
Ooh, you're pretty deep into crypto, right?
Was your question the dumbest investment that we have observed in the outside world or within our portfolio?
You can go with the first one.
Okay.
Let's keep it to construction tech or AECS tech.
Or NFTs.
I haven't invested in NFTs, but I'm quite heavily invested in Web3.
Nice. With personal money, I hope.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay.
We'll find out soon.
Okay. I mean, I will say this. 8 years later, I still don't understand why a person put a single euro into Katera. I still don't understand it, and nobody can explain it to me.
What were the red flags in your head?
What exactly was the improvement in productivity, in value creation, in output, efficiency, utilization, working capital, fixed cost? What exactly was the improvement in that company?
There was hype only, right?
So I'm not gonna, out of the US being a litigious market, I will not respond to that. However, I will say, for a company that touted itself as, oh, we're bringing automotive processes into construction, this was the farthest model from how automotive OEMs actually operate. Because an automotive OEM is a company that owns a brand, that engineers the engine, in a combustion engine world at least, and that owns the distribution channels. And everything, and owns like the design platform of a model. That's it. Everything else was outsourced to a network of highly qualified suppliers that did what they did for decades, and they onboarded them via software, and they said, this is what you produce, here are the specifications, at that point in time, the part needs to be here. And these, by the way, is the contract. But I own the brand, I own the engine, I do the assembly, here's the design platform, and I distribute. Katerra was the exact opposite. It never distributed. It never had a brand towards consumers because it was the developers actually owning the brand and the distribution. The design was something that Katerra did to a degree, so I'll give them that. What's the engine equivalent? I don't see it. And they did a lot of factories. So for a company that touted itself to be as much automotive OEM as possible, this couldn't be the model furthest away. And then it raised $3 billion in order to do what it did.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we were talking about offsite construction, because that fits into the Katerra theme. There's a couple companies. I guess I'll throw it out there. I mean, if they were saying where it's offsite construction, but if you toured their factory and it was essentially like it was just a traditional run process, but it was off-site. It was like, where's the automation? So it was basically you're doing the same processes that you do at infill, but outfield, off-site. And that was kind of a real head scratcher for me of like why the whole reason if you do off-site is to take advantage of automation or some level of automation. But if you go there, it was essentially just humans building in the same traditional manner as infill, and that was kind of a really big head scratcher when I first met that firm, to be honest.
You're talking craziest stories.
Dumbest investment, craziest stories.
Okay, I'll answer the craziest one. Crazy one, and limited to focusing on AECS, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this was early days of Foundamental.
Oh my God.
Let me not take the name of the company.
Oh my God.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, Philippines.
Yes, exactly. So I'll give you enough hints so that with a very simple Google search, you'll find out which company it is, but I'll not take the name. So it's a Filipinian company which at the time was touted. I think it's actually very hard to verify if those claims were true, but let's run with those claims. At the time, it was claimed that it's a unicorn. So guess what? We're talking about a time where outside of the US, there's like nothing going on in construction tech, and suddenly out of the blue, you have this company out of the Philippines claiming to be a construction tech unicorn.
So based on what? On assumption that it might be, or some revenue?
So there was a round, which I guess happened, and the company sort of self-promoted that news to say it's happened at a unicorn valuation.
Philippines.
Yes.
Okay, maybe it was unicorn based on 1 billion Philippine peso.
Okay, we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, the fascinating thing is, very soon after we started Foundamental, we actually got in touch with the company, and they were in conversation with us to raise money from us. Now, you may be wondering, how is that happening since the company is already a unicorn? But I think that's perhaps the least surprising of all the things that played out.
But you're very charming, Shub.
I am. I am. Everyone who crosses paths with me says that about me.
Can't deny it.
And very persuasive as well. Right? I mean, not that I wanted to be persuaded on that call, because I think it was one of those surreal experiences which will stay with me forever. And I think, I don't know to what extent I should be articulating the events there, which maybe I shouldn't. But I think the scene from that pitch meeting felt less like a startup pitching to me, rather than me being in the presence of like a mob boss, passing orders to his henchmen. It felt more like that.
Oh my God.
And I was like, wow, what was I just a part of?
I mean, you do experience some crazy stories in our job. Like one of our younger colleagues was diligencing a firm that was building between UK and Middle East. And the founder, he never gave us information on any part of the business. No technology, no numbers, nothing, but instead said, I'm going to take you out on a private jet. And then, we'll have a good time and we'll work out the deal. And I mean, the younger colleague, of course, was, okay, hold on. Like, what is happening to me? Now, of course, we passed. And then that person, in the end, threatened to sue us because we passed on the company and not taking the offer to go onto the private jet.
Yeah.
That's pretty ridiculous.
Okay, so to close this,
I just want to ask one. Can you see any Kateras?
Any Kateras?
Kateras?
You mean in terms of model or in terms of Icarus story?
In terms of the ending, hype and probably.
Okay, Icarus story. You're luring me now. So I actually think we need to beep out a lot of this last section.
There's been a few. Go ahead.
You can say.
Not with names. Not with names. No. No.
You can beep it out. Bleep it.
after hours.
I mean, we need to bleep out.
Yeah, for sure.
That can't be.
Yeah, and
that
I looked that straight at the camera too.
Yeah, I feel like into the camera. I said, oh, sorry.
I was like, sorry.
Okay, last one then. So, you guys deal with, obviously, you've got successful previous lives before Foundamental. Now you're here building a great firm. You deal with tons of founders like, day to day. Are there any? It's a hard question because I struggle with just one piece. But is there like one, maybe 2, 3 pieces of wisdom or advice that you would have or that stick with you that have helped you get to where you are?
That's a good one.
To founders.
Like to anyone or anything, business life, not specifically to founders.
I'll kick us off. So one of the things that fascinates me the most about people in business is how few people are good at prioritizing. It's one of the most underrated and underdeveloped skills of most people in business life. I would say I took some inventory a few months ago about like how many people I have met in my business career, and it must be anywhere between 10,000 and 20,000. And in this inventory, you realize, hey, who of those people do I admire for how they prioritize? And I came to less than 10. And I think that's a general, probably a general representation of the overall business population of people that you will find. And that is sad because prioritization, if you're really great at it, it allows you to build really strong companies. It allows you to build the strongest products. It allows you to manage finances in all the right ways, right? But so if you prioritize poorly, the exact opposite will happen. Nothing of the good things will ever come from poor prioritization unless you're lucky, right? And so that's one of the things that baffles me about just humans in business in general is how tough prioritization is for like 99 basically 6 sigma of people.
Yeah. I certainly see some founders fall victim to this trap of when you grow, there's still a hesitancy to delegate some aspects of the business, and the founders still want to, oversee everything, and like that's just you just can't scale in that type of mindset. So, letting go, prioritizing, letting other people run some certain part of the business. In terms of like on our side of the table, I'd say like just being open-minded. I think just being closed-minded, not just being intellectually honest with oneself, because you just don't want to disagree with, or it doesn't fit the narrative or internal hypotheses that you have. I think that's you're doomed to fail. It's very brittle. You're not going to level up. You're not going to evolve your thinking or your thesis or how you're looking at the space or even the world. I would say so. I would say that for on the investing side, but on the founder side, I would certainly say you should be delegating more as you grow. If not, then you're going to be micromanaging everything and you're not going to scale.
I'd say being kind in a way where in the beginning you have to go out of your way to create social debt, as in others are maybe receiving kindness and favors from you to be indebted to you. If you're playing a long enough game, it usually compounds very effectively in your favor.
I think it's
I got a
beautiful
bonus
way.
one. Don't care about social signals, neither as a founder or an investor or any individual in this world. Social signals are very
that's-
poor signals.
That's what we learned today.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the old saying is you become an ambulance chaser at the end of the day, you know?
I never heard of that. That's a new one for me.
Ambulance chaser?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you really have no thesis, and it's almost like a weather vane, just keeps spinning. You have like no, or like a compass that can't point the true north. And you have no thesis of your own, and you're just getting dictated by others, and you're just spinning.
Over here we actually say weather rooster because
Weather
they
rooster?
put roosters into the wind.
I love it.
Metal roosters.
Sign me up.
I thought that was what I do. You just described how
Yeah,
I think.
exactly. That's how we met.
That's right.
Yeah, that's how we met in a spinning contest.
Excellent.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
pleasure.
guys.
Thank you guys.